Senator Merkley made a point on the floor that everybody says, well, we shouldn't make a big deal about this because he's just replacing Scalia, as if we should just say, oh, that's fine. Right. But he makes a point. No, this guy's actually, in some cases, worse than Scalia. Here's Senator Merkley.
Gorsuch has advocated far-right conservative positions, not we the people positions, we the powerful over the people positions. Positions even Scalia has opposed.
Yeah. Particularly like on Citizens United and
exactly.
And the Hobby Lobby case, many of his cases, corporations, big business versus American workers.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think, one of the other areas where we find Gorsuch to the right, actually, of Scalia, and the New York Times considers him potentially the second.
Is that a shudder? Just
I know,
go up my
right?
spine.
New
Just
York
chill up my
Times,
spine.
exactly.
He's the right of Scalia.
All of these, I know.
Yikes,
Is that possible? Considers him would potentially be the second most conservative, and the Washington Post, in an analysis of his opinions, would consider him actually more conservative than Justice Clarence Thomas.
Good Lord.
Exactly.
And we already have Alito. I mean, if you need somebody who's to the right of Scalia, we've got Alito, right? And then Thomas.
Exactly. And I think one of the areas
intellectual heavyweight, Clarence Thomas.
Well, we got to put Clarence in a little box. We got to put Clarence in a little box.
I'd like to.
We all, right? But where Gorsuch comes as being more conservative is particularly in this area around protections and the deference that we give to agencies. Listen, agencies and regulation, has become a dirty word in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
But people who work at agencies are scientists and experts in those fields, right? The reason why we defer to what the EPA says about whether or not there are pollutants in the air or how much toxicity and chemicals can be in our water. The Chevron rule.
Thank you.
Yes,
the
Chevron rule.
Right.
And the reason we defer to these agencies is because they are the experts. They know what they are doing.
Yeah.
And Gorsuch is like, well, actually, I think judges know a little bit better.
Yeah, right.
And that's to the right of
All right,
Scalia.
so let's talk political reality here.
Yep.
You need 60 votes for cloture.
Correct.
Republicans have 52 votes. So they're 8 short before they get to Democrats. How many Democrats do they have?
They have 4.
And they
have
are
4 right now. They have Senator Heitkamp from South Dakota, Senator Donald, North Dakota.
I think, but you may be right.
Senator Donnelly from Indiana.
Yep.
Joe Manchin from West Virginia.
Right.
And Senator Bennett from Colorado, home state.
Oh, he's the
Democrat.
4th one.
Yes.
That surprises me.
Well, I think that there are a few things there. I think they're wrong. The calculation is wrong. But I think the Colorado, although Gorsuch has spent much of his career in the East Coast, that there are ties. My sense is there's been a lot of pressure on Senator Bennett, who I think is an absolutely marvelous and really great senator. But I think on this issue, he's in the wrong because I think every time we find ourselves in 5-4 decisions moving forward, we will see, particularly on issues about access to higher education for students of color, if there are issues about access to reproductive health and choices, that you will see these 5-4 decisions and you will be reminded. And I think we forget that there are real people who are held in worse positions because of what the Supreme Court does. If you think about all of the young people who were affected by the president's Dreamer and his DACA and DAPA immigration programs, that this last year, the Supreme Court came down 4-4. There's no decision. And now we see Donald Trump seeking to deport some of those children who in the prior administration had protections. There are real consequences for what the Supreme Court does.
Absolutely. So does the vote take place tomorrow?
So tomorrow on Thursday, Mitch McConnell will move, the Senate Majority Leader will move to bring Gorsuch to the floor.
They won't have enough votes.
They won't have enough because 44 no's. Last night we found out Senator Angus King, the independent from Maine that caucuses, also raised many of the campaign finance corporations are not people arguments, the reason for some of his concern. Have come out. So they don't have the votes.
Okay.
So what will happen? What's next? They'll bring up the vote will fail. Mitch McConnell then has the ability to move what's called the nuclear option. And to be clear, this is a nuclear option. And the fallout from this will be the elimination of 230 years of Supreme Court precedent, comedy in the Senate, and how we have done our work on Supreme Court nominees. I'm a former Senate staffer, spent many years there. This is a game changer. The reason why the Senate is different from the House is because there's a power that we give to the minority, because we believe that if it's a really good idea, then both sides, there should be some bipartisanship. There should be some consensus. And what Mitch McConnell is saying, no more. We're getting rid of that consensus-minded way that we've approached Supreme Court nominees to just move to a simple majority.
Well, the counter argument is there are 100 people, and this is a democracy, and the Senate should be a democratic institution. And if you have 51 out of 100, you got a majority. Well,
you know, the reason why that doesn't quite hold up is because if you think about Senator Feinstein and Senator Harris from California, they represent almost 3 million people in California, but yet the senators of Wyoming represent about 500,000 people in the state altogether. So it's not similarly situated. The reason why the Senate is the upper chamber and the deliberative body is that we give people from really small states like Idaho and Wyoming the same power as people from really big states like California and New York.
But didn't Harry Reid and the Democrats really start this ball rolling when they used the nuclear option not for the Supreme Court,
right,
but went down to 51 for any other judges or presidential like cabinet members.
Right. I'm so glad you raised that, Bill. Like, I'm super excited to answer this
All
question.
Right.
Because I was there. So between 2007 and 2013, I almost want to do a guessing game. There were over 500 filibusters that Mitch McConnell gave to the Democrats, right? So 500 filibusters that Harry Reid had to overcome. There were 2 gentlemen's agreements.
On nonsense stuff, too.
On nonsense things. In 2011 and 2013, they tried to have greater consensus. So 500. And what does that mean? That means President Barack Obama's agenda was not able to move forward, that we saw the use of delay tactics in a way that we had never seen. To give you a scope of the context, from the beginning of history, from George Washington up to Barack Obama, cloture motions had only been used 68 times. From Barack Obama, the first 4 years of Barack Obama, 79 times. So more than the entire history
of the
they've used these delay tactics. So what does that mean? So Harry Reid, after many years of trying to figure out a way forward, changed the rules. But the change, again, didn't include the Supreme Court. Why?
Right.
Because we knew that was different. He could have at the time. I mean, I think there was a lot of pressure, I will tell you, from the base at the time that he should have removed it for Supreme Court nominees. But he didn't, because he recognized that was different. When you're talking about the highest court in the land, you give it a different deference. You want to make sure that you have consensus nominees. And what we're saying is Mitch McConnell doesn't have to change the rules. He can just change the nominee. It's happened in the past. Bill Clinton did it, right? We've seen this throughout history. George W. Bush has done this. But yet we find ourselves in a situation that instead of finding a way forward, instead of making a deal, they're going quickly from 0 to 60, and 60 is blowing up the rules.
So presidents have in the past, and I don't remember the Bill Clinton case, but the the George W. Bush case, he appointed a woman that people just felt was just
Harriet
not
Myers,
Harriet
and
Myers
then
was her name.
they changed her.
And
changed
midway through, they realized she just wasn't going to cut it, so they pulled her name and came up with somebody who was confirmed.
Right, exactly. I mean, the same thing we often find with Bill Clinton. He wanted to move forward with an environmental lawyer. His name was Bruce Babbitt, and
former Secretary of Interior.
Exactly, great guy. And the Republicans said, well, he's not going to make it through. And so what then happened is he actually negotiated the way grown-ups do. They come to the table and they talk. I know grown-ups conversation.
Forgot how that works.
We forget how that works. Came to the table with then Chairman Orrin Hatch of Utah, and he said, well, here are some people that we can consider. Who came out of that deal? Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
No, not Ruth.
Yeah,
Was it Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Yeah, I guess so. I thought she'd been on the court longer than that. No, you're right. I remember. You know, I yesterday or Monday morning, Tuesday morning, whatever, I saw.
It's all a blur.
It's all a
It
blur.
is.
We're drinking so much
It's
under
so-
Trump, it's all just blurs together.
But I saw Lindsey Graham. It was a live shot. It was Monday afternoon. Now they remember. And all the senators, Republican senators, were lined up. And one by one, they came to the microphone. And Lindsey Graham, whom I do respect, because he's he's a maverick and an independent Republican. He's right about a lot of stuff. But on this, he said, you know, it's just not fair. It's not fair. He said, I'm all for changing the rules because it's not fair when the Democrats get all their judges and we don't get any of ours. And I thought, how can you say that with a straight face?
It's unbelievable.
I mean, they think our memory is that short.
I think they do.
think we're that dumb.
Yes. And I was there, and it was hard to keep a straight face, right? Because the two words that I'll say, Merrick Garland, 293 days. Mitch McConnell would have you believe that President Obama received this opening on the Supreme Court October 31st of 2016. The opening happened February of 2016. I remember because I was out to Valentine's Day dinner with my husband. The text came through, and I was like, "Oh, this is not going to be a good night." I mean,
no,
like,
what a way to ruin a date night.
That was it. And so 293 days. I mean, we broke years of precedent. I mean, since 1879. We had never been in a situation where you put forth a nominee and they didn't receive a hearing or a vote. I mean, that was, to me, the beginning of the nuclear option, because we have now moved in a direction where even going through the process, and you saw a number of senators saying, let's go through the process. Merrick Garland also, I will tell people, was a consensus pick.
Totally.
There were progressives who were very upset that he was the selection. But what happened? President Obama, like a grown-up again, goes and speaks to Senator Hatch. Garland was someone who had had support in the past, had moved through the process with support of countless Republicans who were currently in the chamber. But Mitch McConnell, within hours after the untimely passing of Justice Scalia, said, we're not going to do anything on your nominee.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who it was, right?
That's right. That's right.
So do you think that, despite what Mitch McConnell says, that Donald Trump could come up with a nominee Democrats would support? It would have to come from this list of 20 that he put out there.
Well, I think that's a question. I mean, I've never actually seen us farm out our judicial nominations. I mean, when you think about that, you have two very far-right conservative organizations.
They're the ones who put the list together.
The list together, who are backed through a secretive network of contributions that we have no idea. We don't know who they are, who actually fund these organizations, but they say these are the people. So I think that we should also ask questions about that process, and also ask questions about all of the money. I mean, if you are in any of the media markets where there are targets in this, you are getting bombarded with Supreme Court ads to the tune of like $10 million.
That's a new thing.
Yeah,
this is a new thing.
I've seen this.
I don't like it.
I've seen this Gorsuch ad on cable TV.
That's right.
Probably 20 times in the last 2 days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
where does this money come from? Who is funding a campaign to put a Supreme Court justice on the highest court of the land? I mean, these are the types of questions that Citizens United opened up the gateway to unaccountable money and resources. And now we're launching campaigns to get Supreme Court justices confirmed. So I think that there are a number of questions about why, and I think Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island had a marvelous set of questions during the hearing where he postured and shared this to Neil Gorsuch and said, there was $8 million that was spent to prevent Merrick Garland from moving forward. And now we have $10 million being spent to get you confirmed. And if all judges read the law in this kind of neutral arbiter position, why is Merrick Garland not like you, Judge Gorsuch? Mm-hmm. And Judge Gorsuch replies, well, you'll have to ask them. And Senator Whitehouse said, I would love to, but you don't know who they are. They're front groups. Yeah. I mean, this is where we are when it comes to our Supreme Court.
When you see TV ads supporting a Supreme Court justice, I mean, that really should send off all kinds of alarm bells. Yeah. Again, who's paying for them?
Who's paying
for
them?
And what is their interest in having him on the court?
Why him? Why are they spending money on this guy? What do they see about him and how he will view the law that they say this is a sure bet?
And let me tell you something.
I'm putting my money.
I don't know the answer, but I will bet you this: that if you compared that list, if you looked at that list, it would not be the grassroots supporters that put the money behind Bernie Sanders.
That's right.
If you looked at the Chamber of Commerce membership list, that's probably who you'll find.
Come on, Bill.
On that list. Come on,
Bill's
you know that.
Truth in. I'm about to go to church in here with Bill in the studio.
You could say amen.
Amen. All right.
Yeah, say it again for the people in the back.
I'm a child of a preacher. I'm like, a good amen works every time.
All right. So what is your take on what some people have put forward saying, Democrats are making a mistake here. What they really should do is let this guy pass, and then we'll fight the fight on the next one.
Oh, my goodness.
Because he's just replacing Scalia. It's the next one that would turn the court to the...
I actually have to laugh at that.
I mean, isn't that insane?
It is the most insane thing, as if Supreme Court vacancies happen every day. I mean, it is...
And as if everyone is not important.
As everyone is not important. I think about the fact Brown v. Board was a unanimous decision. But Bush v. Gore was 5-4.
Yeah.
When you think about some of in recent history, some of the most important decisions, Obergefell, which opened up marriage equality, 5-4. I mean, so it matters who that fifth vote is on the court. And if you think about the difference in the way that the law has been interpreted over history, do you have a view of the Constitution that looks at how you can broaden and expand rights for those? Or do you have this kind of narrow interpretation that, some people call this originalism, but originalism means women don't vote. Originalism means someone like me with African, Caribbean, and Black ancestry doesn't have full suffrage and voting rights. That's what originalism means. And if that is your interpretation of the Constitution, that is in odds with where our country has gone. And I think it does a disservice to the founders. The founders were visionaries. They recognized that they were building a Constitution that would live for perpetuity.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't looking backwards at what happened at the origins of the country. They knew that they needed to enshrine in this document something that would live for decades to come, well after their death. And so I think we do a disservice to the framers when we have such a narrow view of the Constitution.
I'll give you an amen to that.
All right.